TOA Fit Body Bootcamp and Fit Body Forever communities. What's up, everybody? Robert Linkul with TrainingTheOlderAdult.com. Happy to be here with you all today. We are bringing in a topic that is a I don't want to use the word epidemic, but it is definitely a massively rising concern of ours. Is addressing specifically with young women. But this is ACL injuries, and we're seeing these injury rates rise rather quickly. There are some very specific things we can look at to say this is why these injuries are occurring. But you look at this, you're like, well, this content is for older adults. Yes, however, as coaches, we're always trying to improve the quality of the service that we deliver. Our current clientele may be older, but they have kids, they have grandkids. This is information that needs to get out. But also, this is going to affect them their entire life. Long-term athletic development, LTAD, long-term athletic development, is cradle to the grave. I mean, we've got this whole window of time in life where our clients are going to be physically active, capable, able, recreationally active, and still competitive, so we want to make sure that their bodies are working well no matter what age. However, we are seeing more of these injury rates with younger female athletes and male athletes, but it's trending more. And again, we'll kind of discuss this and dive into a little bit. I have multiple articles. I'm going to show you all kinds of different references and just a ton of stats. But the whole point of this is to arm you, all of us, the coaches, with the information to be able to talk to our clients, talk to our kids, talk to the athletes that we're working with so they know what's going on. So there's one article. This was in the New York Times, I believe, and there's another one from the Washington Post. The Washington Post one was behind a paywall that I don't subscribe to, so I couldn't get into that one. But very good information there. It was very particular. The bullet points and highlights and such mirrored up with this one very well, and they're both within the last year. So you get a chance to check that out, please do. All right, here are the stats. See if I can zoom in on this just a little bit for you. Non-contact injuries, boys soccer in green there, about 40%. And then if you look at their non-contact injuries, contact injuries on the left, non-contact injuries on the right, you'll see these injury rates and how they kind of flow between boys soccer, girls soccer in red. Look at that injury rate shoot up. The non-contact injury rate there is the one that I want you to pay particular attention to. Boys basketball, contact versus non-contact, youch. There's another one to pay attention to. And then girls basketball. So across the board, we definitely have injury rates here that, for the ACL specifically, that are on the rise. These are our great concerns. And then we are seeing that the girls are more susceptible, almost 3-to-1, sometimes 4-to-1. I've seen some statistics that say 5 or even 9 times to 1, more injury susceptible here to the ACL and to overall knee injuries in particular. However, the ACL is the one that is mostly involved in this. You have your ACL, you have your medial meniscus, and you have your MCL, your medial crucial ligament, your medial collateral ligament and your anterior crucial ligament. These two, along with the medial meniscus, make something called the unhappy triad, okay? And that triad, if you were looking at a pivoting knee, you have the ACL in the front, you have the MCL on the side, and then you have the meniscus. And so all three of those, they kind of make this little 1, 2, 3 bracket, but they all kind of originate from this very similar spot. So if the athlete is to plant their leg like this picture is showing, and then if there's any deviation of twist, where the foot stays, the tibia and the fibula stay, but the femur rotates externally like that, that's when the ACL would tear, the MCL would tear, and the medial meniscus would tear, the unhappy triad. That happens often. More often is just the ACL, but that unhappy triad is very common. Anterior crucial ligament, we were going to see connects the back to the front, back of the femur to the front aspect of the tibia, the shin bone. Estimated 90,000 ACL injuries this year. Okay, just this year in college and in high school. It occurs so much more often in women than men. And then certain sports rise when I look at the ACL tears, including soccer, basketball, volleyball, football, skiing, and anything involving stopping, changing directions, jumping, and or landing. Athletes most often will need surgery to repair a torn ACL. Surgeries are very, they're extremely advanced to this point, only getting better. Incisions and recovery from smaller incisions are improving and accruing. And I'm just going to say from where they were 10 years ago, well, let's take 15 years ago when Adrian Peterson recovered from his torn ACL in 9 months and was back playing on the field. That was a monumental jump in the world of rehabilitation for the ACL. It was typically 12 to 18 months for someone to rehab. When he did it at 9, everybody lost their mind. Like, this is not real. Not only did he come back, he was amazing. He was and had no issues. Again, moving on. Statistically, I'll show you this a little bit. Like, re-injury rate is upwards towards 60%. So if you injure your knee, the potential to hurt it again, maybe not exactly the same injury, but another injury to your knee is about 60%, which is high. 40% injury rate to the opposite knee, the mirrored injury can occur about 40% of the time, but to the other limb, right? And that's just kind of a general across all. If I have, a torn, ligament in my thumb, there's about a 40% chance I'll tear the ligament in my other thumb. It's this mirrored response that occurs because we overuse now the other extremity. And because we're continuing to do what we normally do, that injury rate and that risk goes up quite a bit. But the surgeries used to be very open-based. They'd fillet open your knee and they had to, they'd go in and they'd take cadaver parts or they would take a part of your own hamstring, okay? Now, one of the major reasons, there's 3 major reasons these injuries are occurring. Number one is, I won't jump the shark, but one of them, I'll go with number 3. Number 3 is that we don't take the time to teach individuals how to jump, land, sprint, change in direction, lift, concentric, eccentric, proper mechanics. Like, it's underfunding, I would say. And now you don't have the ability to pay for a coach or a personal trainer or somebody to teach them the basic mechanics. This could come from the simplicities of how to run properly and change direction on the field to the complexities in the weight room and how to jump and land and catch cleans and pull weights over your head when you're doing snatches or overhead squats. All of these things can basically add up to all these poor mechanical positions that ultimately lead to this. Okay, so that's a big one. Number 2 is, I'll just go ahead and talk about it now. Number 2 is the quadricep to hamstring strength ratio. It really shouldn't be more than 3-to-1. I know everybody's gonna go, oh my gosh, it should be 50-50, 1-to-1. Of course it should be, but let's be realistic. We live in a sagittal world where everything goes forward in what we do. So the potential for us to build hamstring strength that is equivalent to our quadriceps is just not realistic. We don't walk around backwards all the time. So you're naturally going to have stronger quads than you will hamstrings. Now, should you have really strong hamstrings? Absolutely. Should you be able to do hamstring curls on the machines, physio ball hamstring curls with a single leg? Should you be able to do Nordic hamstring curls on your knees where you're tilting your body forward? Yeah, those are all things that are great for your hamstrings. But when your hamstrings are so severely undertrained and weak, when you try to go do one of those, a lot of times the injury rate occurs from that because you're starting with something too advanced. Again, this goes back to previous injury. You're not doing the proper progressions or working with the right people to teach them what to do in the right orders, proper mechanics, etc. Okay, so we're underfunded, and you'll see that come up here. Lack of funding is a big one, right? Did I finish everything I wanted to talk about on here? More of the cases, ACL will lead to osteoarthritis, and within 5 to 15 years, they'll have osteoarthritis. So you're looking at high school girls that by the time they're in college, they have osteoarthritis. Are you kidding? Like, that's the concern. That's why I was saying this is long-term athletic development, okay? Their whole life, they have to go across here. Women with ACL tears seem to be at a higher risk of arthritis than men, all right? And then the recovery can take as long as a year. Okay, we talked about that. Partial tears can go faster. Let me dive into this here real quick too. Here's your ACL injury mechanism. The female sports non-contact 57% versus male sports non-contact. You see again, they're just planting their leg and changing direction and or jumping, running, whatever they're doing. They're not getting hit while being tackled and then their knee blows apart, okay? All right, so we're gonna get into this. There's some of the stats that are coming here. Let me find the one, let me jump right to this one that specifically kind of talks about this, is the underfunding, okay? So you have the underfunding, then you have the quadricep to hamstring strength ratio, ideally is 2 to 1. Ultimately it would be 1 to 1, but being realistic, it's 2 to 1. Most people that we encounter are 6 times, 8 times stronger in their quads. You put them on a quad extension machine, they can do 100 pounds. Put them on a hamstring curl machine, they do like 20, right? Or 30, and that is even really difficult. So we have to build strength there. Now your third one is Q angle. Q angle is the angle between your ASIS, which is your anterior superior iliac spine. That is a little bony. If you like feel your hip, where your belt kind of goes around your hip, there's 2 little bony parts. There's superior and inferior, right? That's your anterior superior iliac spine or inferior iliac spine. Those little bumps are where the quadricep will originate from, your rectus femoris originates from, and then it descends down your leg and it inserts on the patella. Now that angle of where those incision point or where those origin to insertion parts, let's call it 2 degrees. When you are born and you're starting to grow, it's a 2 degree differential from the origin to the insertion on the patella. As you start to become prepubescent, and your hips start to expand, okay? Because your hips are going to expand, ladies, for range of motion to increase and allow for birth canal expansion for you to procreate at some point, okay, and have kids. So your hips start to grow, which means the angle of the ASIS is going to shift out a little bit, but the kneecap is going to stay. And so now you have like a 2 degree that's now maybe 4 degrees as you're prepubescent, but getting closer to puberty. Then you go into puberty, so now your hips are really starting to expand. That Q angle could extend out to 7 or 8%. Now, as you go through life and then you become pregnant, it's going to extend even more. And we can see that get up over 10 degrees, if not greater. Like it can be a pretty big differential. The problem with this is it's putting a lot of stress on your kneecap while your hip is extending out. That's pulling tighter on the quadriceps that insert onto the kneecap. Well, the kneecap then has to pull your patella, starts to be pulled up a little bit. It's under greater tension, which means the patellar ligament below the patellar tendons attach muscle to bone. So when your patellar tendon goes to your tibia, that's bone to bone. So that's a ligament, right? So the patellar ligament, the bottom part now, is placed under stress. And then behind that is your ACL and your MCL and your medial meniscus, the unhappy triad, okay? So Q angle is going to change. Our underfunding and our quality of coaching and all that is there. And then you have your imbalance in the pulley, if you will, of the quadricep to the hamstrings, okay? So as we look at all those issues and we kind of dive into this, these are the things that the coaches, the personal trainers, the strength coaches, the parents, everybody, we all need to kind of address and consider as we go through this article. It kind of looks at all these things, okay? They have different grades of injury that you can have. A grade 1 occurs when the fibers and the ligaments are stretched, but they don't tear. So it's painful. You have a strain or a sprain, if you will, to this area. It's going to be unstable, but probably does not require surgery. A grade 2 occurs when the ligament is partially torn. The result is a greater loss in stability. It'll feel pretty slippery, and they do something called the drawer test where they sit on your foot and they kind of pull on the back of your calf, and that will show them if there's this little slip of the tibia and the femur head. If they're drifting more than they should, then they can know right away, hey, there's a partial tear or there's a full tear. In some cases, under video, this is terrible to watch. You can watch them do the test and the test tears it the rest of the way. Oh, gross. Because now there's nothing holding the knee in place anymore to go forward, right? Like all the other ligaments are all holding things to go in other directions. So when they pull on it and it eventually does tear, oh, it's so gross. Anyway, so there's your grade 2s. Can require surgery depending on the severity. But your grade 3s, it's torn in half, right? Like or a big vertical tear, and it definitely needs to be repaired. So here's the cool part about the surgeries. I should have put a picture of this in there. The cool part about the surgeries is you have at the top of your kneecap, there's bony part in your patella. And then between the patella and the tibia, where the patellar ligament goes down, that ligament is made up of like gristly, kind of material like your nose or your ears, etc. And ligament. And then it inserts onto bone again. So it goes bone, ligament, bone. So what they do is they take a drill, for lack of better terminology, they take a drill that's circular but hollow. So like if you were going to use a drill to drill into drywall and then put your TV cable through the wall, like that kind of drill, imagine that, but really, really skinny. And they drill through your patella, the bony part, down into the ligament, right down the middle of it, and then into the bony part of the tibia. And then they turn that so it disconnects from the bone, and then they slide that whole thing out, and then they stitch it back together, stitch to stitch. So your patellar tendon or that ligament there is probably 3 times as thick. I'm just guessing, but you're over patelled for the mechanics of our body for the average individual. If you're half Thor Bjornsson and you're trying to deadlift 1,000 pounds off the floor, you need all of your patella. But regular people, right, just regular folk walking around playing sport, this and that, they could probably lose 1/3 of their patella, their patellar ligament, and their knees would be completely fine. So they take about between 1/4 and 1/3 of your patellar ligament out like this. And now what they have is bone at the bottom, your bone, then ligament, and then bone again. So now when they go into your knee and they go, all right, the ACL, the anterior cruciate ligament, went from this bony surface in the back to this bony surface in the front, and now it's cut, they can basically just drill a hole, like a drill bit, right through that same channel where it was, and then put your bone on one end and bone on the other, and let that new ligament in the middle become the new ACL. Now, they tie them in there and sew it and stitch it and bolt it and all that kind of stuff so it like stays there. But ultimately, that's your bone now porously absorbing and adhering into your own bone. So as long as the knee stays straight for 6 to 8 weeks, I think, it might be more than that. Don't quote me again. I'm not a rehab specialist, so I'm just giving you my explanation of reading, right? As that starts to adhere, as long the bone will basically, it'll be really difficult to see that under scan. It'll be difficult to see that has occurred. Okay, you can see it obviously, but it's difficult to see it because it's all your own stuff. Where if you took part of my body and put it into yours, you took my patella and put it into yours, you'd be able to see the difference in our bone and our tendons, our fibers, all that kind of stuff. But if you took a hamstring, even worse, because what was issue number 3, remember? The balance from the hamstring, the quad. What did we just do when we took part of that hamstring tendon? We just made the hamstring weaker. So now our 3-to-1 strength ratio just went 5-to-1 right there because we just took away a chunk of the hamstring. Now we're not taking the actual ligament of the hamstring. You're taking like a chunk of really gristly, meaty hamstring. And then you're going to supplement that in as part of a new ACL, which either of these strategies work really well for holding your knee back together, but leave you impaired basically in your hamstring. 2 of my clients, one named Linda, one named Ruth, both had that surgery. Both of them have a severely compromised hamstring to the point where other injuries have occurred because of that. So that strategy, ideally, I think is old, and the new one is using this new strategy where they take the center out and use all your own stuff, okay? So there are the injuries. We talked about how and why they occur. And then again, you can kind of read these and go a little bit deeper. I just wanted to show you the whole article. They talk quite a bit about not having good mechanics and learning good mechanics. That's where someone like me, a strength coach or personal trainer, when we come in, and with John Adams Academy, I'm going to be in there working with these athletes for a couple of weeks at least. And the coaches, I'll be tag teaming you in. You take over and keep an eye on all these things. Alignment is so important when they squat, when they lunge, when they step up, when they do that, but also mechanically when they're running. Right? You want to try to visualize that you have like a foam roller in between your thighs when running, where you're always keeping this good alignment with your knees when you're making cuts, where the knees don't buckle into each other or valgously collapse or across. Oh, even worse, that you're just asking for that injury to occur. And every time you jump and then land, you should be landing really, really soft and not like banging your heels into the ground. You should be landing on your toes and then transitioning to your heels really soft, but at the same time, not allowing your knees to bow or wobble in. They should be straight up and down every time we land. So eccentrically decelerating down, stretching the quadricep, you're getting an opportunity to really strengthen those ligaments, strengthen all the muscles around it in good alignments. So when the occasion does occur where I'm trying to juke a guy or girl and I have to like step and then cut, my body's strong enough and all the right mechanics to hold. But if it does get out of alignment, it doesn't just blow apart, okay? It's got a good, that's so crazy. That Ruth just texted me. That's crazy. I was just talking about her and that just came up, okay? All right, so as we kind of discussed this one a little bit more, here you go. 4 to 6 times more likely to suffer an ACL injury compared to male counterparts, right? You ladies, man, it's rough. And here's another reason why, okay? And for you female coaches out there, this will be an easier thing for you to talk about. And again, I'm not a female, so I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just telling you, this is what I've read. So during the menstrual cycle, and again, I'm not an expert on this by any means, body is going through this cycle where it's basically resetting through a 7 to 10 day period. And in that process, when the body is kind of recycling, setting, flushing everything, when it's doing that, it weakens. It weakens structurally via the ligaments, via the tendons, even your musculature. So if girls are strength training, and let's say week 4 is their week, okay, their menstruation week. As we build up, weeks 1, 2, and 3, they'll probably feel really strong, very stable, very supported. But as they get closer, like 2 days before their cycle starts, through the cycle, and then I think it's days 5, don't quote me, I think it's days 5, 6, 7, something like that, they are most susceptible to injury right there. It may be a different number, everybody. I'm just telling you there's like 2 to 3 days in that cycle where they are super susceptible to injury. And those are days that they should not be maxing. They should not be doing 100% all-out sprints. But again, you're like, it's game day. What am I gonna not play this athlete or multiple athletes because they're on their period? Like that's you just gotta keep in mind and maybe have an understanding. And crazy enough, when teams stick together, a lot of times those weeks merge. Their timetables will actually merge and almost be on the same. So, which would be awesome because then you could just say like week 4, we're going to take it easy in the weight room. We're going to do more self-care and more stuff to take care of our bodies. Let's really focus on, using this as like an active recovery week. But when we play games, let's maybe have faster turnover of athletes coming in. Like in hockey, can you do more shifts? Soccer's different, but anyway, other sports, like can we cycle people just knowing that there's more susceptibility to injury here? Is something that's now top of mind awareness, top of mind awareness, because this is the week. But then it's almost like kind of superhuman strength now because you've now made that transition. So the first couple like days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're a little bit like superhuman because you're overfilled with all the hormonal responses to your body to be like, dude, new cycle, right? Like new thing here we go. You're full up on all your good stuff. And then over the next couple of weeks, things kind of level out and kind of maintain until that process happens again. So something to talk about with your athletes is recognizing during this week and like being honest with me saying, coach, this is my week. Let's just be a little careful here versus like, I don't want to test, so I'm going to pretend that it's that week because I don't want to do the hard lifts or whatnot. Okay, so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go through. Landing mechanics. This is so important, okay? I'm going to wrap this up here in the next 7 minutes. This is so important, teaching landing mechanics. The conference we just went to, they were talking about virtual reality goggles that they wear, where when the athlete is jumping, the camera's in front of them. So when they're jumping, what they see in the goggles is them, because the camera's pointing at them. But what the VR reality does, the virtual reality does, is it draws a point between their knees and their feet. And so every time they're standing, squatting, or jumping, you can see this rectangle/square from their knees to their feet. And anytime they squat or jump and land and their knees bow in and it looks more like a triangle, it like alerts and it turns red. Bloop, bloop, bloop. It makes this noise. So now they're getting this auditory response, but a visual response. And they go, oh no, I got to push my knees out. I got to keep them in alignment here. Now, I'm not saying like you're walking, like you're riding a horse. We don't need this valgus component, just straight, not a valgus collapse. So if I can build that in when I'm squatting, lunging, stepping, walking, running, jumping, specifically landing, and that's where doing like not a depth jump, but a drop jump, a drop squat, where you don't even leave the ground, you just separate your feet and you go down into the squat, right? You're up high and then all of a sudden you just drop you drop down into a squat. I can show you videos of this. You drop down, you teach these individuals how to throw their feet apart, decelerate their body by 3, 4, 5 times what their body weight is, eccentrically good knee alignment while they're doing this. This builds repetitive strength and tempo. But if you could visually see it, that's where recording, get your phone out and record the athletes and go, every time you jump, your knees are almost hitting each other when you land. Look at this, and have them see it and they go, oh man, this is way worse than I thought now that I've seen that. And let me start to visualize a square between my knees, both knees, and my ankles, going up my shins. There's my square. No triangles. Let's keep this square. And then they can practice. Or maybe coaches, every time they jump or squat or land and their knees go in, they get alerted to like, oh shit, I have to push my knees out. These are responses younger in life that they've got to make autonomic, where they don't have to think about it all the time. It's just happening. That's what's going to save them in the future from not having these things blow apart on them as they move forward, okay? What are the expected outcomes after an ACL injury? So post-operative, there's all kinds of different phases here that they kind of go through, but for the most part, they're going to be off their feet for 2 weeks. They can use crutches. They want the leg completely straight. You'll see running from weeks 2 to 6 after surgeries. The primary goal is to return knee flexion range of motion up to 130 degrees. So there's going to be therapy where they're just going to be bending and working that range of motion, okay? And improving, restoring a regular gait where they're not like hobble stepping, like a pirate, like they're just kind of returning to a normal gait. There are these really cool treadmills called 0Gs. I think that's what it's called, 0G, where it's 0 gravity or 10% gravity or 20% gravity. And it's like hooks around their waist. And from the waist down, it's this bubble that they run in where you can control how much gravity pressure is on your knee, on your lower body. So they can gradually dial up how much gravity is on there. So you can walk and work on a gait with 10% of your body weight or whatever it might be, right? And they can kind of build them in. Phase 3 is weeks 6 to 14. They're in full range of motion. Lower body strength and endurance is starting to occur. They're descending stairs, up and down stairs, getting up and down off the floor, that kind of thing with no pain. And then phase 4, weeks 14 to 22, they're starting to develop now the ability to run free, maximize lower limb strength on there. We have that. Manage daily activities, reducing any type of stress, of inflammation. You don't see any asymmetries necessarily in visual inspection, but also starting to equal up strength levels, etc., from one limb to the other. And then phase 5 runs from weeks 22 on, where they are returning to sport, and that's going to allow them, to run and cut and jump and do all that again. But again, this is a very general guideline. It doesn't mean that's the guideline that works for everyone. It's a guideline. So some will take longer, some will take shorter. It just depends, okay? All right, how can I prevent ACL injuries? We've talked a lot about that. Getting strong, getting really good at eccentric landings, absorbing impacts, working our good proper alignment. Okay, we've hammered that pretty good in there. All right, ACL injuries. These are some of the prevention programs. These are some of the exercises. So bridges, band walks around the knees, anything that's going to strength train the abductors. External rotators and extensors at the hip is going to help stabilize strength above the knee to steer the knee, if you will. And then musculature of the quads, hamstrings, the gastrocnemius is another knee flexor, so having that strong. And then your soleus, your anterior tib, your transverse arch in your foot, your Achilles, like getting all that strong to absorb landings and accelerate, drive back up, absorb and land. It's all one unit, but it's a unit of linked chained muscles that if one of those is weak, it's going to make you susceptible. So you have to be able to have strong feet, strong arches, strong Achilles, strong hamstrings, strong gastrocs, strong soleus, strong hammies, strong glutes, strong quads, strong hips, strong back, strong erectors, strong posterior chain, like basically everything except biceps. Like you can get away with weak biceps and weak grip. That's about it. Everything else has got to be strong for this shit not to happen again. So train your whole body, like train everything, get it strong. Not just, I have to rehab my knee or get my knees strong. Everything's involved in this. It's important. Depth drops, a depth drop is a different term where you're jumping or falling off a box. Don't do those. Don't do those until you know how to land, okay? That's the problem, is no one's teaching them how to land, but then they go do plyometrics. Now you're just accelerating the injury, right? You're just running towards the injury now. Learn the mechanics. We have to learn the basics before you go, oh, I want to go do plyometrics. Can you just bounce in place like you're on a pogo stick without your knees banging together? Then no way we're going to do that other, I almost dropped an F-bomb. No way we're going to go do that other stuff. No way. That's the last thing you should be doing. Bounds and skips and jumps and depth jumps, jumping off of boxes, jumping over boxes. Like you're asking for that injury. But that's what we see all of our high-level athletes doing. That's what our coaches want us to go do. When we go to specialty clinics, that's what they're doing. But you skip steps 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you just like, I'm going to tie my shoes, level 1, let's go jump off of boxes. You got to learn the basics. We have to crawl before we walk. We have to walk before we trot. We have to trot before we run. We have to run before we sprint. We have to sprint before we jump. That's how this works. You can't just go off the deep end in this. You're going to drown. You're going to get hurt. Here's more resources for you to take a look at. Okay, other articles that were referenced in this. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got some good takeaways. Please remember the big 3. Let me go back to this one. The big 3, your Q angle, you got to get your hips strong and understand the different phases in life, where that angle is going to be, how it's going to affect your knees. You got to understand underfunding. That all comes down to the coaching and the quality of people around you to teach you those mechanics and get your hamstring to quadricep ratio strength as strong as you can. The Nordic hamstring is one of the best exercises you can do to do that. But again, if you just hop on a machine and do it, you're probably going to tear a hamstring or pull a hamstring attempting to do that exercise. So you have to have baby steps to get you better at doing that, starting with glute bridges. Learn how to glute bridge properly, and we can build up from there. All right, gang. Robert Linkul, trainingtheolderadult.com. I hope you got some good stuff from this. All my Fit Body owners, coaches, trainers out there, much love and appreciation to all of you. I hope this is something that you can transfer in with your individuals as well. All my TOAers out there, I know we're working with older clients, but you have lots of other people in your life. I want you to have this information. All my sports coach, strength trainers, strength and conditioning coaches out there are working with youth, with middle-aged teenage kids, all the way up into the college and pro level, whatnot. This is a constant, never-ending battle that is always going to have to be fought, and they're never too good. They're never too advanced for the basics. So make sure you're drilling these things home, even if you have to walk them back to level 1 and just start this thing over again and make sure you're hitting all these pieces as we go. Please do that, because, as we've seen, these numbers are getting out of hand. These numbers are getting out of hand, and we got to do something about it. It starts with us, okay? It starts with us. All right, everybody. Much love and appreciation. Take care. Until next time, continue to fight your good fight against sarcopenia. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.